Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Press Play Lifestyle Inspired podcast, where we do podcast interviews with interesting and inspiring people to help our listeners, that's you, find the resources, tools, and support they need to be their best inspired self. Today, we have a new friend of mine. Her name is LaChelle. LaChelle, I'd love it if you'd introduce yourself to our listeners and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. First, I want to say thank you so much, Jackie, for allowing me to share on your platform.
You're
Really
welcome.
excited to have a fellow podcaster. So I am LaChelle Adkins, also known as America's SuperMom. My husband and I have 15 children, and I am passionate about mental wellness. Little bit of background is I suffered from depression for 13 years. So I would not even have labeled myself depressed, because I was still doing those uh, PTO runs and soccer moms and all these different things for my kids that I just didn't realize that I was still unfulfilled. So, needless to say, I was hospitalized 3 times during this 13 years. And each of those cases was after my husband sought intervention for me. So now I'm very passionate after my third hospitalization of saying, you know what? What are the patterns? How can I empower myself to get over this? It was something that I really had to go inward and figure out. So after that self-reflection, personal development, whatever you want to term it, I came up with a philosophy that I have called Fresh Start, and it deals with 5 pillars to help overcome depression and live a life that's depression free. So that's pretty much the basis of what I use now with my clients in terms of one-on-one coaching or group coaching. And I also have a podcast, and I'm a first lady. My husband's a pastor of a church, so I run a lot of different, wear a lot of hats. But just figuring how I can continue with my message on different platforms is something that I really like to do for women and men, if they need to.
That's amazing. So,
Hmm.
you and I know each other from a mutual friend.
Hmm.
So first, please tell us the name of your podcast. You were politely left it out, but we would love people to go. So what is your podcast?
America's Supermom shares insight for better living.
All right. Thank you.
So it's like a long one. Yeah.
And you're like, and the podcast, no.
Right.
People got to find you, lady friend. Um, So, interesting. I just learned something new about you. Not that I need to learn something new, but I did not realize that you were a first lady. Now I feel like I should have been watching my mouth a little bit better. Um,
Absolutely. I'm all about keeping it real. Okay.
yeah. Well, that probably helps you relate to the parishioners.
Yes.
That you're just you doing you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I bet you get so many questions about all of those things, like being a mom with a lot of children, being a
Mm-hmm.
pastor's wife, going through mental health. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the tools that you have brought up in a different environment with me, I just was super called to, and it was this idea of smiling. And I wonder if
Yeah.
you'd be willing to kind of just share what that acronym means for you
So true.
to the audience.
Absolutely. So that is the Smile Choose Happy movement is a hashtag that I am using now. And SMILE is an acronym. I love acronyms. That's how I keep myself together. Okay.
Hmm.
But each of those 5 things within the SMILE are areas that we need to monitor so that we can kind of check in with ourselves to see, hey, am I going in the downward spiral? Do I need to reach out for help and things like that? So the elements are sleep, your mood, inner voice, laughter, and energy. So you notice that one of those areas can really begin to impact all the other areas if you're not in a place to where you're really mindful of, I haven't been getting enough sleep, so then my mood is not good and I don't have any energy. It's this can be a pattern for disaster as time goes on. So yeah, that's the SMILE movement.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's the acronym makes it simple, but it also is a great reminder to kind of, it's a way to be uplifted, you know,
Mm-hmm.
period, smile. Like physiology is
Right.
a little different from that. And if this question is out of line, I suspect you'll be more than happy to tell me. But one of the things that my mom was bipolar when I was growing up, or still is, you know, that
Yeah.
didn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
And the question that I'd be curious of and that I would be concerned of is, you know, at what point there are people who have functional depression who are doing everything they always do, but having these feelings and having things going on for them. And there are people who are medicated and who are not medicated.
Mm-hmm.
And so like how do you know what kind of support that you need? Because I mean, I think you mentioned your husband provided, thank
Mm-hmm.
God, your husband provided some well-needed support and intervention on your side. But what if you don't have a partner that's, you know, that aware? When do
Mm-hmm.
you seek support, either through a
Right.
coach, a medical professional, etc.?
Yeah, and that is such a great question. And I think this was really the missing link for me going back and reflecting. So, we have the term hindsight is 2020.
Mhm.
So for me, I had to go back and think about what were the patterns after they had already occurred. Because as life was happening through me, I was not cognizant of it. So I had a checklist, I've got calendars, I write stuff down, I keep everything in order. So I was doing those things, but I was not fulfilled. But one of the things I noticed was I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating right. There were certain things that I look back and say, all those elements of the smile that I say you should check in with, those were things that were really beginning to show signs that I just ignored. And it was like, oh, I don't have to be happy today, or I don't have to laugh today because I have work to do. I've got to do this laundry, I got to do this. And so you begin to prioritize thinking that you're more action oriented, but self care is such a big element of that. And so as I look back and think about those three occasions where I was hospitalized, I was not even involved in my own um, state of recognizing what was wrong with me, and so I'm thankful that, well, it took 3 times I've learned my lesson, so to speak, right? But for
God
some people,
willing, right?
yeah, they may not be so lucky, because for me to come out, I'm not on medication now. I was only medicated during the time I was in the facilities. And, that to me is amazing. But I think it's just the situation where, you have to know what those signs are. So if you begin to say, hey, one of these areas isn't right, go on Google, look it up. What do I need to do to change my mood? If you feel like you're not funny, look at laughing videos or comedy, on Netflix and things like that, because there are endorphins that are released immediately that can change your whole perspective. And
Yeah.
seeing things from a different lens can really be life changing.
I actually recently joined Toastmasters Laugh Out Loud, and
Oh,
it's literally like a Toastmasters for finding for humor, so that you can
mm-hmm.
learn to do humor better. And it was a interesting realization to me that it might have been a bit of time since I'd really laughed super
Right.
hard, right? Because my cheeks hurt because my muscles weren't used to it. My stomach hurt, and I was like, oh, maybe you need to be laughing more. You got ouch muscles from not laughing enough. Like,
So
that's not
true.
good.
So true. I mean, and I look back in my past and it's like, for that time, it was like, your kids would do stuff and it's like, okay, this isn't funny, guys. You know what I mean? You're so structured about, I need to get this done, that you really aren't living with your kids. And
Yeah.
so it's like moments where it's a great bonding opportunity, but you mess it up because you're so focused on the end result more so than living that experience and creating that memory with your kids, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And what a a sad thing, right? To have 15
Hmm.
opportunities to
Right.
be with your babies, and you like maybe miss some great point because we had to fold all them socks, right? It was like,
Right.
because it's always socks that are not matching. I only have
Right.
4. I got like 3 bins of just socks. I don't even know what's going on there.
It is so true. It's so true. And I'm like, you have colored socks. It's like, okay, we're gonna get black, and this
Right,
is
let's
gonna
just get the same for
nothing
everybody. I don't care
ever
if they're too big.
nothing ever works. You always have some missing mates somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So another question that I'm just curious, and you have a unique ability to answer this, I think, is
Hmm.
um, sometimes people who have of deep faith will say, but but God will bring you through. Jesus will bring you through. Pray on it. Um, it your husband's a pastor, right? Like if anyone's going to
Hmm.
pray on it and it's going to be okay, that would have been you. So,
Hmm.
what do you say to those that sort of go, well, it's not that serious, or, God can solve all things, just pray on it. Do you have any insight into that kind of?
Absolutely. I think, there is this element of believing that faith is important. Now, that definitely is my foundation, for me to be able to make it every day with 10 kids at home,
Yeah.
my husband working, it's like, hey, if it wasn't for God, I don't know where I would be. But I think that, when you're experiencing a battle where it is, um, in some aspects, it's a spiritual battle, but it's also, in the here and now. A lot of times if I start talking spiritual, people will think, there's like another dimension with that. So it's like, yeah, you're here, but you're not here, or it's futuristic. And, people can understand that it's hopeful, it's positive, and, we do. But I think the element is to relax and recognize that you're a human first. So when people, a lot of times people don't know that I'm a first lady. I don't go around saying that because I feel like it's more important to connect with people rather than separate from people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, even though I may not intend it, it causes separation. So like people, like what you said, oh, I hope I didn't know that I watched what I said, right? We immediately kind of feel like, okay, we're on the spotlight because we're in the presence. And so I like to recognize that the realness is finding what we have in common rather than what separates us. And
Mhm.
so being able to have a safe space to say, you know what, I'm struggling with alcoholism or any other issue that people really may be struggling with and need to come to church for. I think that's more important rather than the platform that I have as being a first lady. And
Yeah.
so I think it's the element of really being able to share my story and be approachable and see that people can struggle with these things themselves makes it more impactful to really make an impact in people's lives and make it to where, we all struggle, and a lot of times we say that, but we don't live that. And so for me, I'm reminded of that every day when I have 10 kids that are looking at me and it's like, hey, I may not be in the best mood every day. Well, I'm not going to be on a podcast interview one of those days when I'm not in a good mood. I mean, you
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Jackie, I got to reschedule. It's been a rough week, whatever, but when I know that I have to do something and be a spokesperson or whatever, it's being in that right place to be intentional to add value to people.
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
hope
that's
that answer
beautiful.
your question. I'm
Yeah, I
going
think
off.
it does. I think that it was a great distinction that I think that people miss, because
Mhm.
when I was younger, my grandmother, her first husband beat her unmercifully.
Mm.
Her second husband, her first husband married a woman in Korea, and so they got divorced. And my grandmother was actually the one kicked out of the church. And so
Wow.
I was raised Catholic, for
Mhm.
context. And
Everything
then,
Catholic too.
yeah. And they don't necessarily, do that now, but in those
Right.
days, my grandmother was excommunicated for getting a divorce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just think to myself, but that's when they need our love.
Right.
Like, it's when people are in their lowest place that they need community, not
Mm-hmm.
that's not the time that we kick them out of our
Mm-hmm.
community. And so I appreciate that reminder that
Mm-hmm.
we're all children of God, or whatever your belief is, of the universe, of the spirit, of
Mm-hmm.
Allah, Muhammad, whomever it is that you believe. Uh, but that doesn't have to be a thing that separates us, and it also isn't the only way. And it doesn't mean that your spirituality and your physicality are always in sync, right? So if you don't feel good, you can ask God for help on your way to the doctor.
So true.
I'd
And
be like,
everybody's faith is not the same, so just
exactly.
like I said, I'm not taking medicine, but I know people that do, so that's
Yeah.
their journey, that's their walk. And, you have to be in tune with yourself enough to know what is it that fuels you? How do you feel good? Because we just have to be the best version of ourselves. And I think we lose that through this comparison, or we think if they do it without medicine, what's wrong with me? Well, we don't know. There could be some genetic history or
Yeah, some
some
other
chemical
chemical.
imbalance. Yeah, that you don't even know. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we ran
Mhm.
into that. We have a child on the autism spectrum, and
Mhm.
so some people are like, well, give medication. I'm like, well, there's actually not a medication for autism. There is for ADHD and some other things. So we
Right.
choose not to, but I'm not judging those that are making an effort to try. Like, that's their journey. I don't even know what's going on with them. It's not fair for
Right.
me to project that. So I would be curious, would you be open to, if someone were struggling or thinking they might be struggling with depression, would it be safe for them to go to their church community or their clergy members or their pastor and ask for support? Would that be something you would encourage, or would it be different for everybody?
Yeah, I would encourage that. I think it's one of the elements where people have to do what they feel is best for them. I think everybody's journey is different, of course. And, just like you said, you had the experience with Catholicism where you're excommunicated. So each different religion may approach it differently. And it's a good way for you to figure that out,
Right.
because to me, depression is a very serious matter. It's something that really can affect your thought process, how you live your life. It can impact your relationships. And I think it's important to kind of know where you stand in those areas. And so if
Yeah.
you really put a lot of faith in your religion and you find out that, hey, I don't really know if I appreciate how they might have reacted or whatever, experiencing life with your spirituality is important. So really finding out where you stand with that, I encourage that, so
Yeah, because
that's
that
just
could
my
help with some anxiety, right? You know the
exactly.
answer, at least. You're not living in fear of a
Exactly.
future that you have no control over anyway, right?
So true. Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
I think that's beautiful. So, wow, so much wonderful stuff to share. So it's obviously you have resources, or you're strongly
Mhm.
supporting mental health and specifically the depression arena. We've talked a little bit about your podcast. Do you provide resources? Like, what are your resources, or where is your community, that if someone on this call is like, I need to reach out to someone, I don't know what to do, where would you suggest they could go? Or is there somewhere that you
Mhm.
have that they could maybe start with?
Yeah, I think it's always good to kind of gauge how safe you feel. So if you don't feel safe, hotlines are good, different places and resources within your community for people who make mention of times when you're feeling overwhelmed. really being able to kind of identify how you're feeling is so important so that you know how to respond. A lot of these things you can get through Google, in your local community, reaching out, therapists, mentors. Um, I think the first thing is really that awareness of really figuring out where you stand. Because in my case, I had so many distractions of always checking the box and keeping this list of things that I accomplished for each day that I just didn't see the signs or ignored them or whatever. And so when you are kind of aware of what those signs are, then you can act accordingly because awareness is really the first step.
Yeah.
And for everybody it's different. So some people may need a therapist. Some people might just need a good coach that they can go through a 6-week program, and just that little mental mind shifts can help them. So it's a case by case basis. And a lot of times we sometimes find that different causes for it. Some people, it could be childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Some people, it could be,
Situational or yeah.
yeah, it could be a job, or it could be postpartum depression, which is another
Which
thing.
is
So there's
scary.
so
Yeah.
many, yeah, so many variables that I can't even say. I'm not a doctor to speak on, but I would say really beginning to identify with, what are some patterns that you see in yourself. I'm all about being proactive in your own situation. I mean, I had a retreat that I was in last week, and one of the speakers was misdiagnosed with something. They said she had MS. She was taking like a chemotherapy drug for 16 and a half years under a misdiagnosis.
Mm.
And so I ended up getting her on a podcast. I was like, Lord, how did you do it? And she said, I really believe it was a mind over matter thing because I told my body, this is healing you. And it didn't have the harmful effects that maybe somebody else doing that to themselves over 16 years might have had. They were amazed that she was still walking, and it was amazing, her story. So, like I said, it's an individual journey. I encourage people, when you do feel like you want to reach out, have some idea of where you want to go. Interview people. A lot of times we just answer a call. So it's like, hey, I have a coaching program, I'm doing this, but it's like, really dive in and deep and say, what do I want? Is this program going to serve me? A lot of times we just jump on the bandwagon, and, we really don't take that time to figure out, this is just not a good fit for me. Interview the coaches. Do they feel personable? Do you feel you can trust them? Are they authentic? There's so many different things that you can approach it where, you want to see if this person can give you value, or are they going to be holding you accountable? Do you care if they hold you accountable? I know there's some people that they're like, look, I don't know, she's too laid back or whatever, or, they have different preferences. And so we just don't resonate, for whatever reason. So I think that's important that you kind of deal with those things in the beginning so that you can kind of chart your own course, because that's your inner voice is there. It's just, in my case, I know it was buried beneath a lot of, concern what other people thought. And, am I helping and adding value? My worth, I felt, was tied to the jobs that I did. So if wasn't doing anything, I didn't feel like I had value. Just crazy stuff that now it's like, I'm me, and hey, this is, you see, what you see is what you get. But it took a while to get to that space.
Yeah, I can see that. I know one
Mm.
resource, if anyone's interested, if you're not a person who is suffering with depression, but you are a person who supports someone who's suffering with a mental illness.
Mhm.
I personally am a big fan of the free resources
Oh yeah,
provided by NAMI, so
Nami's good.
NAMI.
Yeah.
They have a mental health first aid responder um, course that they teach for, it's like a 2-day workshop that I personally have been through that
Mm-hmm.
they do in different, it's run by volunteers, but it's a really great opportunity to see how you might be able to be supportive or
So
um,
true.
I don't want to use the word intervention because that feels a little harsh. But if someone's having a major anxiety attack in the middle of the mall and you recognize it's an
Yeah.
anxiety attack, going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" isn't really going to help, right?
Right.
So it's gonna spin them. So I think that's an opportunity for those of us who are supporting people we love who may be struggling in some way with mood disorder. That's an opportunity
Yeah.
for them as well.
So true. And once you begin researching, you'll find so many different things out there. It's like if you see a yellow car or you're playing a game with your kids,
Yeah, you always see
you
it
get
now.
to see all these yellow cars. So it's like a lot of us, we don't think about mental wellness, or mental health. And so once that gets on our radar, then we begin to seek that out. So there are so many different resources. And even now, a lot of people are struggling with a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
once you begin that journey of doing that, homework, so to speak, it's different in every area. But yeah, that's the best
Yeah.
way to approach it.
And if I might offer, I think one thing to consider if I'm on your husband's side of the perspective, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you see the people that you love behaving consistently different than when they're at their best selves, that's usually an opportunity to consider if they're smiling, right? They're using that smile.
Right.
So that might be a way to be supportive. And it doesn't have to be interventive feeling. It could be, let's go watch a comedy. It could be, how about you take a bath? You haven't done that on
Mm-hmm.
your own in a while,
Mm-hmm.
make a funny dad joke or dad bod joke or something, like, just to give
Mm-hmm.
that little boost. So there's opportunities for us to be advocates for those we love because we know them best. And they may not
Right.
see the patterns that you described, right? But your husband
So,
thankfully did.
yeah, that is so true. And, that's a very good point because, we could use that as a segue for anything. It's like, hey, let's go out here and create a memory with the kids. We're going to go out and just blow bubbles, in the front yard and so it's those moments of just taking a break, even if it's like 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't even take a lot of time,
Yeah.
but I like the fact that you mentioned that about being proactive and just creating that opportunity, however that looks, it could be face painting or, getting some shaving cream, on a
Yeah.
cookie sheet and doing stuff,
Yeah,
even as
exactly.
adults, we like to have fun, so
Yeah, we
I,
forget,
I
but yeah, we do.
yeah, I went to a meeting this morning and we had a magician there. And so
Oh,
it was a
fun.
virtual magic show. And it was like we laughed the whole time, but it was just such a breath of fresh air, something like that. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Hmm.
So if people want to reach out, you say you had some programs that you're supporting.
Yes.
Where can they find you online?
Yeah. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, and I have a YouTube channel.
You
So,
are everywhere you want to be.
yeah. And, right now I do a lot of coaching through Facebook groups, master classes I've been performing. And so I am available for one-on-one sessions. I basically have a lot of content on my podcast, a lot of different insight that people can get. Um, so yeah, they can pretty much reach me there. And then I have like these 1-minute videos that are on YouTube. So,
Wonderful.
how to, give people advice on goals during a pandemic. Everything's like a minute or less,
Yeah, I
a
love
quick,
that. So
yeah.
that's a great opportunity for people to consider. I call it marinating your mind in goodness, right? The things that you want to be a part.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have a habit of dwelling on the things that cause us angst, but you can develop a habit of marinating your mind and the positivity that you want to be. And so one opportunity for people to consider is if they subscribe to your YouTube channel, it's only a minute a day, it can begin to create the habit of mental wellness,
Mm-hmm.
the habit of being present in a joyful
So,
place. So I would
yeah.
encourage anyone who's trying to make joy or, personal
Mm-hmm.
development a new habit. 1 minute a day is a great way to start.
So true.
You don't have to jump in all in. You can sneak in a back door a little bit and it'll be all right.
So true. And, really, that's about all we can handle. I always use the analogy of playing the piano. So you've never played the piano before, you like it, you know how it sounds, but you're approaching this, you don't know where to put your fingers, you don't know what keys or what note, you don't know how to read music. So you're not going to be playing Bach after you decide you want to play the piano tomorrow.
Right.
So we have to have those small steps. And I'm reminded of the compound effect also, where if
Yeah,
you
by Darren
improve,
Hardy. I love
yeah,
that book.
but even if you improve 1% a day for a whole year, you're 365% better at the end of the year. You can't accomplish that in a day.
No.
You just wouldn't be able to maintain it. But when you break it down into small doses, it's something you can maintain and continue to level up on, which creates that compound effect because you're evolving at a higher phase than what you were when you started. And that's a continual process. So that's just amazing to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much for taking the time with us today. I'm sorry that I went over, but you're just
Oh,
so interesting and I like having conversations. We'll make sure to put in the show notes all of the places that people can find you online.
mm-hmm.
And I really would encourage people. I tend to be long-winded, so I would definitely start with like the 1 minute,
Mm-hmm.
ways to think differently, ways to put yourself in a smiling place. And that's definitely something that you're supporting people with right now. So again, thank you so much. We'll make sure we get this out to you. And thank you all the listeners as well for taking the time to come to our podcast today.
Oh, you are so welcome. And thanks again for having me. It's been a blast.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.